the technical lead for the Battelle Tetra Tech team on this project, and I'm a project manager and ecological risk assessor. I've been working on various Treasure Island sites for the last 10 years or so, and before I joined Tetra Tech and started working on these environmental projects, I worked for a few years doing aquatic toxicity testing, which I don't know if any of you know much about, but you will a little bit later, as that's part of our project. We'll be doing the sediment portion of the work, and as Jim said, we'll be working with the Trident probe, and we will give you a nice overview of it tonight.
So the presentation overview, we're going to discuss the site background, previous investigations and assessments, current investigation approach, and then the project schedule. You can see where site YF3 is located, is right there on Yerba Buena Island on the north side, and this is a enlarged map of that. And site YF3 is located right there, just north of the bridge, and there's the bridge right there. There's Clipper Cove. The site background: in 1866, the U.S. government took possession of YBI for defensive fortifications. Between 1898 and 1897, YBI was used for receiving goods, housing, and training troops. Today, YBI, including the YF3 site, is owned by TIDA, which is the Treasure Island Development Authority, Caltrans, and the U.S. Coast Guard. And you can see this is where YF3 is right there. In fact, right there. There's a 1945 aerial photograph of that site, and this is from 2016. This is the latest photograph right there. Here is an aerial overview, aerial view of the site looking east and southeast. And you can see there's the Bay Bridge right there. There's our site located at YF3, which is right there, and this is Yerba Buena Island. So this bridge goes towards Oakland in that direction. So in 1945, a former building 214, a heating plant, was located at this site, and also former 10,000 gallon above ground storage tank AST 214 was located at former building 214, and former AST 214 contains diesel fuel and was connected to former fuel lines. In the 1980s, building 214 and above ground storage tank 214 were demolished and fuel lines were removed. This picture shows the former locations of AST 214, where building 214 was located. So you can see that's where the tank used to be, and the building 214 was right there. You can also see the outline of former piers extending into the Clipper Cove. See where the piers used to be, like right there and there. Those are former piers. They're not there anymore. The storm drain is water piers extending into Clipper Cove. And storm drain lines in yellow and wastewater lines are in green, right there. There's the wastewater lines. The piers were used for refueling and transferring oil to the vessels. So these photographs are the latest photographs we took, in fact, last month, early in the morning when the tide was out. And as you can see, much of the shoreline area is covered with cobbles right there. Cobbles are pieces of rock which are 2.5 to 10 inches in diameter in size, smaller than a boulder, but larger than a pebble. So you can see what the site looks like. Algae covers the cobbles where the tide moves in and out. So when the tide goes in and out, you can see they're all covered with algae in there. Sediment is exposed away from the shoreline when the tide is out. Like here, the tide is out. You can see the sediment is exposed, like right in here. You can see a portion of the Bay Bridge in the background right there. See it up there. So previous investigation activities. In 2003, a corrective action plan was completed. It summarized petroleum investigations in soil and groundwater from 1994 to 2000, and it recommended additional sampling at site YF3. In 2013, a field activities report was completed to summarize additional sampling performed in 2012. As you can see in the photograph on the left, drilling equipment had to be delivered to the site by large barge to accomplish the sampling in 2012. You can see huge barge had to be brought in, delivering the equipment in 2012. The photograph on the right shows the drilling rig used in 2012 with a bobcat carrying the drill rods. There's a bobcat right there. There's the rig, the drilling right there. The field activities report recommended that a screening level ecological risk assessment be conducted for site YF3. So this figure shows where groundwater and soil samples were collected through 2012 at site YF3. Black circles represent where groundwater samples were collected right there. And the black triangles represent where soil samples were collected. You can see where the soil samples were collected right there. Samples were analyzed for various chemicals to understand the potential for petroleum impacts. Diesel and motor oil petroleum hydrocarbons exceeded screening criteria for ecological receptors in 3 locations, and those locations close to the location of the former UST tank. So most of those exceedances were like right in here. In 2015, a screening level ecological risk assessment was conducted. Screening level ecological risk assessments are performed using existing data and conservative exposure assumptions biased towards overestimating risk, so that sites that may potentially pose a risk are evaluated further. The screening level ecological risk assessment for site YF3 evaluated risk to the environment. There is no human exposure at the site due to the absence of human exposure pathways. The screening level ecological risk assessment for site YF3 recommended collecting additional data and conducting a baseline ecological risk assessment. It's also known as a BERA. The baseline ecological risk assessment refined exposure assumptions and provide a more focused evaluation of actual ecological risks versus the conservative assumptions in a screening level ecological risk assessment. So now we're going to focus on the present and the future. So the Navy is preparing to conduct an additional investigation in the shoreline of Site YF3. The goals of the upcoming investigations are to better understand the site, including the nature and extent of petroleum hydrocarbon contamination in pore water and sediments in areas beyond those previously investigated. Now, the new word is pore water. So you might not have heard the term pore water before. Pore water is the water that fills empty spaces or pores in sediment. If you imagine a container filled with marbles and then water is poured into it, the marbles would be the sediment, and then the water between the marbles would be what we would refer to as pore water. And then we're going to conduct a baseline ecological risk assessment to assess risk to ecological receptors as noted previously. The baseline ecological risk assessment is more site-specific and less conservative than the screening level ecological risk assessment. Based on the results of the investigation, including the baseline ecological risk assessment, the Navy will recommend site closure or further action.